Today we're going to be discussing the home buying process and the correct steps you will need to take if you're thinking about buying a house. For most people, this is the most expensive purchase they will ever make, and it's an emotional process. You get excited one day, then disappointed the next day, then excited again, then you begin to feel nervous. I mean, it's really a roller coaster of emotions. But if you do everything the right way, it can be the best financial decision you ever make. But if you don't do it right, it can be a real big mess. Now yes, it would be great if you could just get to a point where you found the perfect house and you're standing next to the sold sign with keys in hand, but it's not that easy. However, in this video, I will be explaining the home buying process and give you some home buying tips that will make the process easier and more enjoyable. And if you're new here, my name is Edgar, and on this channel we talk about personal finance, investing, and business. So if that is something you want to learn about, consider subscribing. Now the first step to buying a house happens way before you even begin the actual home buying process, and that is to save enough money for the down payment, closing costs, cost of moving, and the cost of any repairs or renovations. Let's start by going over how much you will need to save for the down payment, and depending on what type of financing you plan on using, that will determine how much you will need. If you go with FHA financing, then your down payment could be as low as 3.5%. So that means that for every $100,000, you will need $3,500 for the down payment. So if you buy a $100,000 house, then your down payment will be $3,500. If you buy a $200,000 house, then your down payment will be $7,000, and so on. Now, if you go with a conventional loan, then your down payment could be anywhere between 5 and 20% or even higher. So if you go with a 5% down conventional loan, then you will need $5,000 for every $100,000. Or if you go with a 20% down, then you will need $20,000 for every $100,000, and so on. Now the next thing you will need to save money for are closing costs, and depending on where you live, these can vary, but in general, closing costs are about 2 or 3% of the purchase price. And some of the things that make up your closing costs are things like escrow fees, lawyer fees, application fees, appraisal fees, loan origination fees. You have to pay to make sure the title to the property does not have any liens, then you have to insure the property title, and there will be multiple home inspections. Now depending on where you live and the agreement you have with the sellers of the house, some of these expenses could be covered by the seller, but either way, you will have closing costs, so that is something you should expect. The next thing you will have to save for is the cost of moving, doing repairs, or doing a renovation. And because this can vary so widely from one person to the next, getting an idea of how much this will cost you is almost impossible. For example, if you are buying a new construction house, then more likely than not, the house will be 100% move-in ready, so there will not be any repairs or renovations. However, if you buy a house and need some repairs, you could be spending a few thousand for things like new paint, new flooring, or new carpet. Or there's also the possibility that you bought a house that needs a complete remodel, and at that point you could be spending $20, $40, $50, or $100,000 on a renovation. Plus, you still have the cost of moving, and if you're able to get some friends or family who can help you move, then the only expense you will have is the cost of food and drinks and some basic moving supplies. However, if you're moving across the country or you don't have anyone who can help you move, then your moving expenses could be anywhere from a few hundred to a few $1,000s. So once you have enough money saved to cover your down payment and the other expenses that come with buying a house, the second step is meeting with a loan officer unless you're buying in cash, in which case you can skip to the next step. And the reason why you want to meet with a lender before you begin looking at houses is you need to know how much house you can afford, so you are not wasting time looking at houses that are not an option for you. Now when you're meeting with a loan officer, they will ask you about your employment history, income, current assets, and credit history. And you will need to provide documents to prove the information you are giving is true. So you should expect the lender to ask for 2 years of tax returns, paycheck stubs, bank statements, and your social so they can run your credit. And once the lender has all of this information, they will match you to the correct loan based off the information they collected from you, the amount of your down payment, and your overall needs. Now there are many types of loans that are available, but by far the most common are conventional and FHA loans. Conventional loans are not backed by the government, but instead are issued by banks or private lenders, and the down payment for these loans are normally between 5 and 20%, although you could put more money down. So if you are going with a conventional loan and you're trying to get the best terms possible with the lowest rate, then you should aim for a down payment of at least 20% and have a credit score above 740. But of course, the higher your score, the better. Now the second most common type of loan you could get is an FHA loan, and these are normally referred to as first-time homebuyer programs. Now these loans are insured by the Federal Housing Administration, and because of that, these loans are easier to qualify for. So if you're someone who doesn't have a lot of money saved for the down payment or your credit score isn't perfect, then you could still qualify. Now that does not mean that just anyone can qualify, because there are still requirements you have to meet. For example, if you want to buy a house with a 3.5% down payment, then you must have a credit score of at least 580. Or if your credit score is below 580, then you could still qualify for an FHA loan, but at this point your down payment would have to be about 10%. Now these are just some general things to consider when going over your loan options, but of course there are many other factors that will impact what loan you decide to get, and this is why you must meet with a lender before you begin shopping for houses. The third step to buying a house is finding a trustworthy and knowledgeable real estate agent. Buying a house is a complicated process with so many moving parts and factors that must be considered, and a frequently asked question is if a buyer even needs an agent or if they can go at it alone. The answer is that you don't necessarily need an agent, but here in California, the seller pays for the realtor commissions for both the seller's agent and the buyer's agent, so there's really no reason why you wouldn't want someone representing you. It's not like you'll be saving some money by representing yourself. In fact, it's most likely the opposite, because agents are familiar with the process. They can help you negotiate a lower price and better terms. It's important, however, that you find yourself a good agent who has a good track record. This is where a good agent and a bad agent can make all the difference. A bad agent can cost you thousands by overpaying or buying a house that has major issues like roof leaks, foundation problems, or illegal additions. However, a good agent will help you sort through all the wrong information floating out there, help you find and schedule properties to see, and become your chief negotiation officer, saving you thousands. Also, I would recommend sitting down with your agent before starting to look at houses and have them walk you through the process and explain what to expect at every stage of the buying process. You should also take this time to write down your home criteria and separate your needs and wants. For example, your home needs are going to be something that you must have and that you will not be able to change, such as location, neighborhood, school district, or size of the lot. Then consider the things you would like to have but are not essential, like having an open kitchen, having a long driveway, or having a pool. Knowing these things in advance will make the process go a lot smoother and will save you lots of time and frustration. Now, if you are a first-time homebuyer and you've never worked with a real estate agent, a good place to begin looking for one is by talking to friends or family who have recently bought or sold a house and ask them how their experience was, and if they are happy with the service they received, then you could consider using that person as your agent. Or another option is to go online and search for real estate agents that work in your area, and as long as they have good reviews, then you can use them as your agent. So once you have the right agent guiding you, then now you can begin the purchase process, which begins with searching for houses, and your search most likely started a while back on places like Zillow, Realtor.com, or Redfin. However, something important to note is that a lot of these websites will have their own estimates of how much a house is worth, but rarely are they ever correct, so the best thing to do is ignore these estimates altogether and instead have your agent provide you with market comparables. Then when you start looking at houses, I would recommend you look at as many houses as possible. You can even take a weekend and visit various open houses so you can get a better idea of what is out there and what you can realistically expect to get within your budget in a certain area. Also, by having seen as many houses as possible, you will be able to recognize when you find the perfect home for the best price. Then after you find a house that fits your needs, it's time to put together an offer and submit it to the sellers. This is another area where having a good agent makes all the difference. Depending on your individual circumstances, your agent will write an offer that highlights all the benefits the seller will receive if they accept your offer. One example is if you are a cash buyer. In this case, your agent can highlight that there will not be a lender involved, which means an appraisal is not needed, and that eliminates one more thing that can go wrong. Also, with cash buyers, the escrow period can be as short as you want, so if you have a seller who is in a rush to get their house sold, this will give you an upper hand. But not everyone is a cash buyer, so that means a lender will be involved. So in this case, your agent must find other factors to highlight that appeal to the sellers. For example, I had a client who was looking to buy a house and they were using a lender, so we couldn't offer some of the terms a cash buyer would be able to offer. However, after talking with the sellers, I found out they were moving to Texas, so when I presented my client's offer, I let them know that my clients were not in a big rush to move into the house and that they were willing to have a longer escrow than normal to give the sellers some extra time to move. Because of this, my clients were able to get the house they really liked and both parties were happy. So once your offer has been accepted, you move into the contingency period or option period, whatever you want to call it. The point of this is to give you some time to inspect the property, go over all the disclosures, and make sure the title to the property is clear. Now at this point, you would have given the seller a deposit to show your commitment, and a question I get often from my clients is what happens to that deposit, and it can either be one of two things. The first scenario is that the house does not have any major problems and that there isn't anything that would prevent you from buying the house. So in this case, your initial deposit would go towards your down payment. The second scenario is that you discover something wrong with the house during your contingency period, and this can be anything from major foundation problems to problems with the title of the property, and in this case, what you can do is cancel the transaction and your initial deposit would be returned. However, keep in mind that this will have to be done within a certain time period, so you should consult with your agent regarding this. As I said before, the contingency period is meant to give you some time to do your inspections and review all the disclosures regarding the property you're looking to buy. When it comes to inspections, you should at the very least have a general inspection done, and this is where someone will come out to the property and look over everything from the light switches to the roof and everything in between. and once the inspector has completed his inspection, they will provide you with a report where they describe everything they found and if there are any issues with the house. At this point, you should talk with your agent and go through this report with them to see if there is any issues with the house, and if there is not, then that's a good thing and you can move on with the purchase process. However, if there is something wrong with the house, then you can request that the seller repair whatever the issue is, and if they agree, then that's that and you can move on with the purchase process. But if the seller does not want to make any repairs and you are unwilling to cover the cost of those repairs, then you have the option of canceling the transaction, getting your deposit back, and going back to shopping for a house. When it comes to requesting repairs, most times you should be able to come to an agreement with the sellers, and it can be that they make all the necessary repairs, or they make some repairs and then you also do some repairs when you close a transaction. The only time when you would cancel the entire transaction over repairs is when those repairs are major, like foundation problems or something along those lines, but for the most part that is not something that happens often. Then during the same time, you will be meeting with your agent, loan officer, and escrow officer to sign several disclosures and documents, and these will vary depending on what type of loan you're using, the type of property you're buying, and where you're buying your house, but just know your signature will be required on several documents. And once everything is double checked and verified and you wire the remaining balance of your down payment and closing costs, then congrats, you are a homeowner. Now, even though at this point the legal process of buying a house is done, you should keep in mind that the actual process of buying a house is not something that happens overnight. Now, if you're buying a house in cash and you are in a market where there is a lot of inventory, then the buying process for you could be as fast as a week. However, that won't be the case for most people because most people will need to go through the pre-qualification process, they need to find the right agent, they need to find a house that works for them, and they need to go through the escrow process. So this means a home buying process can be anywhere from 45 days to 6 months or even more. So it is important that you have patience and do not get discouraged when you're 3 months into the buying process and you haven't found the right house, because the right house is out there, you just need to wait for the right opportunity. So with that being said, you should have a good idea of the general home buying process, and obviously I didn't cover every detail and every possible scenario because then this video will be over an hour long. However, if you take the information in this video and you have a great real estate agent and lender helping you, you should experience a smooth home buying process. And with that being said, if you enjoyed watching or you found this information helpful, it would really help if you like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.